All right, this week I'm here with Seth Fowler. Seth Fowler, founder of Apthcry, which is a global sock brand, but that's not where Seth started. He was a massive YouTuber. You still YouTube?
Yeah.
Still YouTube, started with kicks, and it's now evolved into lifestyle. And rather than me keep going on about what he does, I will let Seth tell you what are you up to right now? Tell me about Apthcry and what you're doing around that and content and growth.
Apthcry is kind of what I'm building at the moment. It's sort of a sock lifestyle brand. I co-founded it with a friend of mine from college. We were both industrial designers. That's sort
Industrial designers, what does that mean?
So essentially anything that's a product. So when I went to school, we were looking, it's sort of like graphic design except in the 3D space. So it's furniture, I worked for Martha Stewart for a while doing kitchenware. It's electronics, like anything that you can touch that's a product falls under the category of industrial design.
Is that a new term, or is that something that's been around for a long time? And when I say new, I mean like in the last 10 years.
No, it's been around for a long time. I think the newer term is probably product design.
Okay.
But it's from what I've gathered, it's something that's always been around. It just hasn't always had a term. But it's been around. I think the most famous industrial designer is probably Dieter Rams, and he worked for Braun, the shaving company, for a long time, back when they were designing everything from radios and all sorts of stuff. Another really popular industrial designer would be Johnny Ive from Apple, who designed like the iPod and things like that. But it's been around for a while, but I just don't know if a term for it had been coined until probably the 60s. Would be my guess. Yeah.
So industrial designer, and you created Apthcry.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
So, like you mentioned, I love sneakers. And one thing that I'd always wanted to do was create a product that I wanted to create a product that was better than something that was already out there. That was just always a love of mine, to create something better than something that's already out there. And I was struggling to find a category that needed some sort of help, right? And honestly, it came down to COVID. Like me and my industrial designer friend were just kind of talking one day, and we both really had a passion for creating products. And we're both sneakerheads, and we both thought of socks. Like, socks are something that you wear usually with your sneakers. And it's something that is just so common that people don't really try and innovate on it as much anymore. And when they do, it's like small things like, we changed the color of this, or we're slightly making it, there's not a lot of innovation going on in the sock space. So we spent a lot of time developing new kinds of socks. And we've landed on one now that we call the Sock 3.0, which has been in development probably for the last 4 years since we started.
How does one innovate socks?
That's okay.
Like, I'm listening to you, and like I feel you.
Right.
I feel you, and you want to own something. You want to create something that's never been done.
Exactly.
But how do you create something that's never been done, and you come up with socks?
Socks. Yeah. So it was honestly, our original idea for it was we wanted to create just a really great, comfortable. Oh yeah, we got a pair right here.
Oh, boom.
We wanted to create a really great, comfortable pair of socks that looked great with all of your sneakers, and also was a cool accessory. Like, socks have never been the accessory that people try to really. It's never been the focus of a fit, and we wanted to make it the focus of a fit for people, because usually you throw on a basic pair of uncomfortable, I won't say the brand, but uncomfortable pair of cheap socks with your sneakers, and it gets forgotten about, and then your feet get sweaty, and it sucks. So we redesigned the knit process. So for example, you can see on these, they have these little triangles called iso weave that allow for more breathability, more stretchiness. Super comfortable on feet. They fit great. They hug your foot great. And we also changed our knit blend. So it's a proprietary knit blend, which does a much better job of.
You have a proprietary knit blend for your socks.
Yeah.
That's awesome, and that's where the industrial design really comes in.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, it was a process of just trying different things, experimenting, working with factories, trying to find just the best combo of everything. And that's one thing that a lot of sock companies have their own versions of, right? So like, Bombas has their own version of their proprietary knits. They have their own versions of knitting patterns and things like that, but we found something that we're really happy with. And then our sort of unique selling proposition is the fact that we collaborate with really cool artists and influencers and people like that to create socks that people actually want because they look cool. They look cool, they're comfortable, they feel great all day.
Collaboration really makes the world go round.
Absolutely.
And especially for you as influencer turned founder.
Yep.
You know the value of collaboration.
Absolutely.
Who was the first influencer or artist that you collaborated with?
So the first influencer that we collaborated with was someone that I actually had met through YouTube. Another sneaker influencer named Hes Kicks was our first.
Spell that.
Our first, Hes Kicks. Yeah. And we did because he's Korean, so we did a Korean themed sock, which was really cool, and it did really well for us. And then we collaborated with some other sneaker influencers because that's sort of just the connections that I had at the time.
Totally.
And then we expanded into artists. So we've worked with some New York-based artists. For example, one named F. Who's based in Brooklyn. He does some really incredible stuff. Amber Vittoria, she's big in the Web3 space. We did some collaborations with her, and then recently been working on some other collabs, which are coming out in the future, which I'm excited about, but I can't really mention. But they are coming soon.
How do you go about picking which artists you collaborate with?
It's usually people that we really like. It's people that we like. So for example, with our first collaborators, it was people that we just knew personally that we really liked. We liked what they were doing in the content space. And then as we sort of grew and we got a name for ourselves, it was easier for us to reach out to the artists that we really liked. Like people that we follow already organically that we thought they have dope art, it would look great on a pair of socks. People don't use socks currently as a great canvas to show off art. And we figured offer this canvas to people who, have great art that maybe is just on social media, maybe it's just on literally canvases, allow them to show off their art in a way that they've never been able to before. And I think that's been it's made it easier for us to sort of pitch ourselves to creatives because we're like, this is a new way for people to get your art out there and wear it every single day and be a canvas to show off what you do.
That's awesome. And now you're super friendly and you're very welcoming. And as a founder, you also need to be very stern.
Right.
And you got to put your foot down sometimes. Are you able to do that? And what I mean by that is, have you worked with any artists that have shown you work of how they want to collaborate and you don't like it? Are you honest about it?
We haven't run into too much of that. There's been a couple artists that we've had one in particular we had, I think, a creative difference with on just generally how the collaboration process worked, and we just...
I like the way you said that, creative difference. Creative difference, it's like, that's a very corporate way of saying, I didn't fucking like this.
I still love their art, they still do great stuff, I just think that they didn't work too well with us on certain aspects, and I didn't work directly with them, it was just the other co-founder who worked with them. But the good thing is because we have another co-founder, who's had corporate experience being a manager and a boss, he's able to do all the sort of like the bad cop stuff, which makes it easier for me because I can just be the nice guy that just is like, oh, I love what you do. And I genuinely mean that. I wouldn't say it to someone who I don't actually love what they do. But
and you wouldn't be bringing them through the door if you didn't love what they do anyway.
Exactly. But we really haven't run into too many issues to where it's been a problem for us. And I think it's because we're very specific about who we choose to work with. Yeah.
Amen. So let's go back before Apthcry, before 800,000 subs.
Oh, we're at 1.17.
1.17 million subs on YouTube. Before the first 10,000.
Right.
Before the first 1,000. Where'd the passion come from? When did you get into kicks?
So I'd always been into sneakers. Mainly is because of basketball. I'd always loved basketball. I grew up in Baltimore. I was never a Wizards fan. I was always a Sixers fan because of Allen Iverson. And I just loved the game, and I loved the sport. It was the only sport that I really played.
Would you say the answer is your favorite shoe of all time? Or the question?
Ooh,
do either of them fall in your top three?
I hate to say it, no. I honestly,
I'm trying to remember which was the question, which was the answer.
The question was the one that had, like, there was a question mid. It's the one that it's kind of got...
Which had the beehive?
I think the question mid had the beehive.
Yes.
Yeah. The answer was more of the low top. The answer was a step over shoe, I think. The answer 4, answer 5, I don't remember exactly
which one. Question's the one I'm thinking of. For me, that's the AI staple.
I prefer the question.
Yeah.
I prefer the question. But for me, I always loved Jordans. And maybe it's because that's what everyone was wearing. Especially in Baltimore, it was like foam posits was big and New Balances, like the 990s. But yeah, so I really always loved primarily Jordans, and that's sort of what got me into sneaker YouTube. I just loved the idea of content creation. And I'll be honest, I was living in New York at the time, like 2016. I had tried YouTube channels before in the past, just for fun. And I was working as a designer in Long Island, and I was spending a lot of money on sneakers. And I was like, you know what? I'm not wearing half of these sneakers. I got to do something with them that justifies me spending all this money on them.
And you were buying them because to you,
I just love them.
You just loved them. They were art.
Exactly.
How many, when you were in high school, do you remember how many pairs of sneakers?
Oh, I didn't have a lot in high school.
Not in high school.
No. I did, well, so I ended up working at Vans for a while in high school, and it was right next to DTLR in the mall, which had like the foam posits. That's where all the great drops would be. But my parents didn't see much value in spending like $250.
It's interesting, you're saying the foam posits. So now I don't know how old you are, but 32. So I'm 38.
Okay.
So for me, I wasn't a fan of the foam posits.
Right.
And here's why. The foam posits started coming out in different colors back, more your generation.
Right.
I had the original foam posits back in 96 I think it was.
Right.
96 or 97, the original penny foam posits.
Yeah.
And then I got the Tim Duncan foam posits in
Nice.
'99.
Nice.
Like, so when they started remaking them,
Right.
it kind of to me felt a little fugazi.
But fair
Although
enough.
some of them were
Fair
dope.
enough.
I
Yeah,
remember the Paisley ones were pretty sick.
Oh yeah, okay.
The Paisley ones were sick, but other than that, I wasn't a fan of all the foam posit recreations.
Yeah.
I remember senior year of high school, I think I had north of 70 pairs of sneakers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
There were certain pairs, like the 11s. I had the
Oh,
11s
gotta
in
have
probably
those.
5
Yeah.
or 6 different colors.
Nice.
The Reebok Classics, which
Right.
was just like a simple shoe, like
Right.
different. I think I had like 8 different colors in that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And just tons of Jordans.
Yeah.
And I loved sneakers, and I could see how like the foam posits, because they were art.
Yeah.
were-
And I'll be honest, I like them from a visual, from afar point of view. I don't like wearing them that much. I have probably 2 pairs of foam posits now, and I do wear them. I have the Supreme foam posits, and then I have the metallic reds, and they're fine. Like they're fine. They're hot. They're bulky, but I like. They're nostalgic for me. It's really what it is. Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
And a lot of the stuff with kicks, I mean,
all
look
nostalgia.
at the Jordan retros that come out.
Yep.
It's all nostalgia.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that's what sells them.
Exactly. And that's why, not to get into it, but that's why I think Nike and Jordan are having so much trouble right now, because it's all nostalgia based. There's not much innovation as there is with other brands.
There's zero nostalgia, and there's a lot of content out there that literally talks about that. It talks about being able
Yep.
to go into Foot Action, Foot Locker, Athlete's Foot,
Yep.
and seeing the new shoes that have just come out.
Exactly,
And there's
yeah.
none of that.
Yep.
Like the early 2000s was so big on just innovation, and now
Yep.
none of it.
Yep. It's all like the 1985 sneakers. It's crazy.
Literally.
It's wild. Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's 2016.
Right.
You're living in Long Island.
Right.
And what was your job at the time?
I was designing kitchenware.
You were designing kitchenware, so you were an
Yeah.
industrial designer
Yep.
for
Yep.
kitchenware.
Exactly. Yep.
And you're starting to collect sneakers, and you're just
Yep.
spending all this money, and you have boxes of sneakers that are piling up, but you're not wearing any of them.
No, I mean I was, but it's like you can only wear so many sneakers per week.
Yeah.
7 pairs. So yeah, I was living. Actually, I was living in Queens at the time on. Well, I can say it now because it was years ago. Putnam Ave, like right off the Forest stop on the M.
Yeah.
And I would take the. It was so frustrating because I worked in Westbury, I think is the LIRR stop that I got off of, and I'd have to take the train to Jamaica. I'd have to take the M to the J stop, and then the J to Jamaica, and then transfer to the LIR. It was a 2-hour commute.
Every day.
Every day. It was brutal. For not that much money either. For not that much money. But I was living in this small $500 a month apartment, which was actually a great price for the room that I was in. But the room was filling up with sneakers. And so I was like, I've always loved YouTube. I want to find a way to create content around the things that I love, I'm passionate about. So combining 2 passions. So what I did was I started making videos on sneakers from a designer's point of view, from an industrial designer's point of view. And I don't know what it was, but there was something inside me that was like, you got to just, even though I wasn't seeing too much success in the beginning, I was like, you just got to keep going. You got to keep making content on it. And that's what I did. And it took probably about a year before I even had maybe 5,000 subscribers. And that was putting out probably 4 videos a week. Yeah, it was wild. I would go to Foot Locker, I'd buy sneakers, I'd review them and return them, usually, is how I do it. Because I just didn't have, like, I was probably, I mean, spending money-wise, I didn't have a lot. And I was just trying to turn around content because I just really enjoyed making content. And honestly, it probably kept me out of some like, I think the trap that you can fall into as like a 20-something in New York is like just going out constantly. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you really want to build something, it's hard to do when you're spending all your money on drinks and food and whatever.
Well, a big part of that is, you are the company you keep.
Right,
So
exactly.
And I'm a firm believer of that you are the sum of the 5 people you hang out with.
Oh,
most.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So who were you hanging out at the time that this was your motivation to actually put in the work on into your passion versus going out and partying?
It's tough because a lot of my friends did go out and party, and they're great. I'm still friends with them to this day. And I did go out here and there. But I think it wasn't until I really got plugged into the YouTube community that I found people who were doing that on a very regular basis. So I don't know. I think it was there was a lot to it. I was with my wife now. At the time, she was my girlfriend, and she lived in Philadelphia. So I think there wasn't a need for me to go out and try and meet people. I think that was a big part of it. I just loved making content. I think is the biggest part of it. My mom had passed away, and so it was a way. I honestly think that initially it was a way for me to deal with grief. So there's a lot of different things that all kind of came together to just kind of not force me, but really gave me that drive to do it. And then I started, I think it was the November of 2016, SneakerCon had come to New York, and I'd been to SneakerCons before as a sneaker customizer, because that was what I was doing before, just on the side. And I finally got to meet all these YouTubers that I've been watching for years, like Tom Stefaniak, Oh It's Teddy, Heskix, like a lot of these big sneaker influencers that I watched and really looked up to. And so I was able to get plugged in with them, and then being able to chat with them on a regular basis, I think really got me into like, okay, this is a real thing, this is a grind, let's do it. And so it kind of just grew from there. I switched jobs. I switched to a job in Manhattan called BarkBox, where I designed dog toys. And I was there for a couple years, and I think that the YouTube channel blossomed even more there because I was going into Manhattan every day to work, and so at lunch I could go to all the sneaker releases. Like that's when all the Yeezys were coming out, all the Pharrells. There was big Jordan releases all the time, and I could just literally at lunch walk down to Kith, pick up the newest sneaker, either resell it or return it or whatever the case may be, get content on it. And so it made it really easy to just pump out even better content because I was getting even better sneakers than I was
So
before.
what year was it that your mom passed?
2016.
20,
so it was literally
so this was all at the same time.
It was all at the same time, yeah. Yeah.
Does any part of you following your passion, do you think any part of it inside was like, my mom is watching down
I think so.
I want to make her proud
Yeah.
and not go fuck around. I want to better my life. And I know that going out and spending $100 tonight
Yeah.
on drinks versus staying in and making content, which is
Right.
something that I really fucking enjoy,
Right.
that your mom would enjoy that.
I do genuinely think that had something to do with it, at least, for
How'd
sure.
your mom pass?
Breast cancer.
So sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like, it's crazy the amount of people that you know growing up who just have dealt with the same exact situation that you've dealt with, or at least that I've dealt with. And it's, I don't know, it really did give me a lot of motivation.
Losing a parent?
Well, I'm sorry?
You're saying losing a parent?
Yeah, losing a parent.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's, and I wouldn't say I was lucky, but I would say that I was blessed that it happened when I was an adult. You know, it affected me differently than it would have if it had been when I was, like 8 or 9, but I won't get into that.
Totally. So my mom passed when I was 17.
Right. I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And different people react to it
Absolutely.
in many different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had, countless amount of people have told me like, you went the direction that most would not have. Going into your senior year of high school, losing a parent, it's crazy.
I can't imagine.
In 2016, you were what, 27, 28?
I was 23. I think.
23.
Yeah, something like
Losing
that.
a parent at 23 is still.
It's still losing a parent.
That is extremely tough, and the majority of people would have probably dealt with it in a much negative way. But you took that energy, and you put it into your passion.
Right. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I genuinely don't. I think it could have gone either way. I don't know what it was. I really don't know why it went that direction. And I'm blessed that it did go that direction, but I genuinely couldn't pinpoint one reason why.
Well, it's because of the way you were brought up. You didn't just come out of nowhere.
Right.
Parenting plays a huge part in life.
Totally.
And the system of which you were raised in, and the way that your head's programmed, that's what pushed you in that direction.
Yeah.
Now, to piggyback on that,
Right.
when you were following all these sneaker influencers or creators, and you started getting into the game, what was it in your head that made you think, I need to do this my way? Because a lot of people would have looked and they would have tried to just replicate.
Right.
You were like, I want to do this sneaker thing. I want to make sneaker content, but I want to do it from an industrial designer's point of view, which was unique at the time and probably would even be unique now.
Right.
And that's why you stood out.
I don't know. I mean, there was definitely some replication, I think, because a lot of it, the thing that I noticed was that at the time it was kind of, I wouldn't say it was a Wild West, but it was definitely like people were just, they'd put a shoe on the table and be like, this part's blue, this part's red, this part's whatever. And that's, that's important for a review. If you're looking at something, that's what it is. But there was that sort of added level, and I think certain people were doing it certain ways. Like Kai Somar at the time was vlogging, which was huge and made a lot of sense. I don't have a personality that's as conducive to vlogging as he does, or my friend Tom Stefaniak, who also was vlogging at the time. It was just coming at it from a more, I guess, analytical point of view, which wasn't done as much. I was looking at people like MKBHD, like tech reviewers, and because originally that's back in 2006 when YouTube was starting to come up. That's what I tried. I think it was 2007. I put out a review on the Xbox 360 Elite in my bedroom. I was what, I don't know, maybe 12. No, I couldn't have been. I don't know. It doesn't matter. So I put out this review, and
You
so
were a kid.
I was a kid, exactly, exactly. And you can go back and watch it, and it's awful. Well, I wouldn't say go watch it, but I wanted to come at it from a more professional point of view than the people who were doing it less professionally, I guess is the way to say it. And it just, I don't know what it was. I guess it just ended up working out. I guess it was just being consistent with it, which is just the key to, I think, any kind of content. So that's sort of how it happened. But then I became really good friends with some of the other sneaker influencers, and that really helped. Like specifically Tom Stefaniak and Kais and all those different people, because we all had that sort of common goal of just creating content for a living and seeing that it could be done from the different levels. Like there was people who had 100,000 subscribers. There's people who had millions of subscribers, and getting to know those people and seeing all the different stages of it, and knowing that it's achievable was really big. Yeah.
So, a year and a half.
Yeah.
The subs are growing.
Yeah.
Inch by inch.
Yeah, it
by
was a slow
inch,
process.
and it's really inching.
It really is. Yeah.
When did it really start to catch fire?
I would say probably end of 2017. That's when I got just out of the blue, just this opportunity to meet Virgil Abloh. And it was purely like, it wasn't because I was an influencer or anything, because at the time I probably had 10,000 subscribers. I just won this contest on Nike's website. You write an essay of why you should deserve the chance to meet and talk with Virgil Abloh. It was a design essay, and I was like, well, I'm an industrial designer, I could do this. So I wrote this essay. I won the chance to meet with him. I got to buy the upcoming Off-White Air Jordan 1s early, and got to talk to him about it. And so I filmed the whole process, made like 4 videos out of it, and they just all popped. And then it was
yeah.
great. Exactly. It was great. It was like a month early, and I was like, this is amazing. And that's back when it was hard to get sneakers early. I mean, it still kind of is, but so I just kind of piggyback off of that. And then once people realize it, like, oh, this dude's living in New York and he's getting sneakers right when they come out, like he's not only reviewing them from a point of view of like a designer, but also he's getting most of the releases. And I was spending a lot of money at this point, but I was able to buy like almost every single release that was popular, because I just was working in Manhattan, and I was able to go to the store right when the stores opened. So I was able to grab all these releases. So I think that was a big part of it.
You're saying you were buying one pair to
review, yeah.
To review.
So I would buy a shoe literally the day it came out. I would drop the review as soon as I got home from work, because I'd buy it at lunch usually. And then I'd either sell the shoe, or I'd return it, or I'd keep it, or whatever it was. But it was just putting out a bunch of reviews on sneakers that, like, for example, my friend Tom lived in Canada, and I was able to get shoes that were only dropping in New York that no one, like in LA, Canada, wherever, could get, just because that the brands were just dropping them in New York for the most visibility.
So when you say that you would either keep them, return them, or sell them, where were you selling them?
Like online, StockX,
StockX, eBay.
Like exactly, eBay. Yep.
Tell me, how do you feel about StockX?
Oh, I love it. It's great. I love it. Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about StockX?
It's really easy. It's really easy to buy and sell sneakers. I think more so, so I love eBay a lot for a lot of different reasons, because I used it since I think my account's from 1999. It's like an OG. It was my mom's account initially. It's like an OG account. But I love eBay because it allows you to sell anything in any condition. StockX I love because it's simplified the process, where it's literally like you have the shoe, it's new, you click sell, and you sell it to the highest bidder, and that's it.
So eBay is like that. eBay is like a diner.
Exactly.
Like, eBay is like a diner. It's been around forever. It's not going anywhere.
Right,
It's
right.
trusted.
Yep,
You could have good quality, bad quality. Everything's there.
Right.
And you know what you're getting.
Exactly, yeah.
StockX is more like
Sleek, shiny.
a brasserie.
Exactly. Yeah.
StockX is like a brasserie, and they really sift through the BS.
Right.
But if you hit it right, you can get a really good deal on something.
Exactly.
Or if you just really want to spend up, you can get anything you want.
Exactly. 100%. That's a perfect way to describe it, actually.
So you're now making content. You're up to 10K subs.
Right.
The
Right.
video with Virgil comes out.
Yep.
And then what?
It just starts to pop. Like everything starts to do well. The videos go from like probably getting maybe 500 to 1,000 views per video to like averaging like 10 to 20,000 views per video. And then it starts like I start making the same amount of money at my job as I was making I started making the same amount of money on YouTube that I was making at my job, which I think at the time I was probably bringing in before taxes like maybe $4,000-ish. And then I was making the same amount on YouTube, and I was like, wow, this is something. This is serious. And then I don't know what it was.
And one of these is growing at a higher rate.
Exactly. Well, so it's funny because it was one of those situations where I think if I had continued to stay at my job, I would have eventually made the choice to leave. But I was presented the opportunity of being forced to leave my job.
You were presented an opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Seth, we want you to wait. How does that work?
We'd really like you to not work here anymore, is what they basically said to me. And at the time, it was pretty brutal because I'd never been fired from anything, and I think there's a lot of reasons.
Would you call it getting fired?
They didn't really have a name for it, but there was like 4 people who got laid off on the same day, and then there was consistent layoffs for the next couple months. I think it was getting fired because
Well, if you go and you look up a synonym for laid off, fired is probably one of them.
I was straight
probably
up
the first
fired,
one on the list.
Absolutely, and I have no ill will towards the company. They're a great company. I think at the time I was very angry, and I was like, this is, you know what, I'm making more money on YouTube anyway. They can suck it, like all this stuff. But the more I look back on it, it's like, no. As someone who now employs people, I was thinking. I realized I wasn't focusing at my job. I wasn't putting in my best work. I learned I didn't want to work for other people. And I wasn't a good employee. I think overall, I had a blast. Like, it was one of those jobs, like it was a startup, you could drink, you could do all this fun stuff. They were making cool stuff. I thought that I was making cool stuff, and I'm sure I was, but I wasn't providing the value that my salary was basically asking me to provide.
Hey, at the end of the day, it was a blessing.
Exactly.
Like, beyond.
Absolutely.
Because now,
Yep.
you got more time to sneaker reviews.
Exactly.
Is that what you did?
Yeah, so I went full-time on YouTube after that, because I was like, so basically, over the months leading up to me getting fired, I had noticed that there had been some things were shifting, and I could tell that I probably wasn't going to be there for much longer. I saw like job listings for my position online. I'm like, that's weird. Like, what is that about? Are they hiring more designers? Oh, it can't be. That's my exact position. There was things like I had a.
Were you naive to think that you were not going to get fired?
I genuinely, in my head, I just didn't think I was going to. I was like,
well,
I've never
it was a
been
startup.
fired.
You thought that it was a growing startup,
And it was.
Like,
I mean, and they've continued to grow, and they've gotten even bigger now. And I think it really is. It was me just. I fell into the trap that I think a lot of young people fall into today, which is where like they think that they're just owed everything. You know what I mean? And I definitely thought that. I was like, no, this job, like no, they would never fire me. Like they owe me this. Like I've been working there for a couple years. Like I'm owed this, and I wasn't. And looking back on it now, it was 100% my fault for getting fired. But I'm happy that I did. I really am. And they're doing great. I'm happy for them. But yeah, it was really a blessing. And so I went full time on YouTube. I lived in New York for a couple more years, and then a couple more months, and then I just moved back to Philadelphia because my at the time girlfriend was there, and I was like, why am I living in this city when the job I had, the only reason I was in New York is gone. So I moved back to Philly, and then I just started pumping out as much content as possible, and that's when things really started to take off.
So when you moved to Philly,
Yeah.
now you're out of the New York City scene.
Right.
You don't have the ability to go to Kith for kicks.
Right.
You don't have the ability to go to where else?
Like the Foot Lockers in New York just have more stuff.
Okay.
All these sneaker stores just have there's way more sneaker stores. There was Concepts, Kith.
Right, Concepts.
I can't think of all of them, but there's a bunch of them. You know what I mean?
District, or is that just resale?
I think that's just resale.
Okay.
And I don't know if that was there because I left in 2018. It might have been there. I just didn't know about it.
No,
at the
it
time.
wasn't there.
Okay.
No, it wasn't there. Wait, so now you moved to Philly. Like,
Yeah.
what are you able to do? Like, what are you able to do? What are you not able to do? How are you able to
Right.
get your kicks?
I was traveling to New York a lot. I was traveling because before, when I was interning actually for Martha Stewart, so I went to college in Philadelphia. When I was interning for my jobs in New York, I would literally travel up and back every day. So I was used to the travel. It wasn't too big of a deal. And so I'd only go up for sneaker releases that I really thought that I needed. And by then I think I was at maybe 200,000 subscribers, so brands were sending me stuff. So at that point, I wasn't as reliant on the sneaker releases. And that's really like, then it also forced me to diversify the content a little bit too. So it's like more about not so much just reviewing the newest sneakers, but also doing like lists of like, oh, what sneakers are coming out? Like just stupid stuff that like seems commonplace now, but at the time it was, I mean, everyone was doing it, but it was definitely a newer sort of area that was getting more viewership than just plain sneaker reviews. Yeah.
I love that. So when did 200,000 subs turn into 500,000? And I'm sure this was 2017. So now, 200 turns into 500
Yep.
in like the next 2.5 years.
Yep, exactly.
And
Yeah.
you're strictly doing sneaker reviews.
Yep.
In that amount of time before you started getting into the sock game, did you have sponsors? Did you have any brands that came knocking through your door?
Yeah, I had
Who was it? What was your first sponsor?
the first. I think it was a sock company actually. I think it was a sock company.
You can give a shout out.
I don't. I actually.
They're not as good as you.
I don't remember who they were. They
Like-
paid me $200.
Like
for just, you know what it,
their sock does not compare to this sock.
no, it doesn't. I can tell you that for a fact. I can tell you that and I don't know if they're still around, but they paid me $200 to do a sock review for a pair of no-show socks. And that at that point, I think the video did okay. It was like maybe 5,000 to 10,000 views, so $200 at the time. I guess probably, maybe it's fair. I don't know. I wouldn't have taken that now, especially not owning a sock company. But yeah. So and there was a lot of brands sending me stuff, like Adidas and Jordan Brand would send me stuff. So I'd be able to review. Like at the time, they were sending out these really like amazing press packages. With like early sneakers, but it was not only the early sneakers, it'd be like, you'd get, for example, Adidas one time sent me this giant like plastic briefcase that inside you open it up, it had the new pair of NMDs, but it also had like backpacks and like speakers and all this like crazy stuff. And you could make these videos on unboxing these insane packages, and these videos would get like hundreds of thousands of views. It was amazing. And that was sort of how, those were sort of my main bread and butter videos in like 2019, 2020 timeframe.
How do you feel about the quality of Jordans right now? And as a industrial designer, that's what I'm talking about. I don't mean the style.
Right.
I'm talking about like the actual quality.
I mean,
I know how I feel, so I want to hear your honest opinion.
It sucks. It sucks. I mean, it's people aren't buying Jordans because I hope this doesn't piss off Jordan too much, because they haven't sent me anything in years, so maybe I'll just say it. But no, it's not. It's like people think that they assume that the leather that they're getting is decent leather, and a lot of times it's synthetic. Or it's just the worst cut of leather. And I was involved in creating a couple sneakers over the last couple years, and you get to see what like real leather is made of, or what it's actually like, and then you compare it to like mass-produced Jordan leather, and it's just two different worlds. And the reason they do that is because it's for profit, and it's totally fine. You can't fault them for it, but you're not getting designer quality leather on a pair of Jordans, and you shouldn't expect it. And if you're buying sneakers if you're buying Jordans because you think you're getting this amazing quality material, I mean, construction-wise, they're fine. Like I shouldn't be hating. The construction-wise is fine.
But they're not great.
I mean, there's. I would say that other than the material quality, there's nothing wrong with them. Like,
going from there, I saw that you were posting the Mizunos.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love that.
I've kind of sworn off big box brands.
Right. Yep.
I'm done. I'm done.
Oh, really?
There's so many smaller brands that have a much better quality shoe. Yeah. My everyday shoes, I'm wearing a lot of Vince, which is just a luxury clothing brand.
That's awesome.
Luxury clothing brand that makes just a great quality shoe.
That's awesome.
Love that.
Yeah.
I came here in a pair of Diodoras.
Oh, nice. Oh, I mess with Diodoras.
Yes.
Fire, yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
Because they're putting out something to get into the market space.
Yep.
So tell me about the Mizunos that you were wearing.
So Mizunos, they actually reached out a while ago and were like, "Hey, we'd love to send you some product. I don't know if you're familiar with us." And I'm like, I had always known who they were, but apparently they're only sold currently at like Kith in New York and then online. So my exposure to them wasn't that great. But they sent me a couple pairs, and I was like, I'll wear these eventually. And one day I just decided to throw them on. I'm like, wow, these are actually these are nice. And they're a Japanese brand. They're similar to ASICs in a lot of ways, except they.
How they wound up at Kith.
Right, yeah, they definitely have honestly, they seem like they're a slightly higher level of quality compared to a lot of stuff on the market right now. It's like the leathers that they're using seem nice. Again, it's not going to be like, designer quality leather for any shoe that's $200.
Right.
But it's nicer than what you get with Jordan Brand and what you get with probably even Adidas or anyone. I think that it's just a really nice feeling product. And every shoe that I've worn of theirs so far has been really solid. I've been running in the Mizuno Neo Vistas. It's like sort of a marathon style running shoe, which I suck at running, but like I do it a couple times a week. And it's just comfy. It's comfy, and I feel like I'm bouncy in it, so it's great. I run in those, and then I run in a pair of New Balances. But yeah, so everything that they produce, I think they're primarily performance running and then lifestyle running style sneakers currently.
What is your favorite sneaker of all time? Which I'm sure you've gotten that question before, but
yeah.
What's your favorite sneaker of all time?
Jordan ones, the bread ones. Yeah.
The breads?
Yeah.
Oh, so you must have, what was the movie that came out?
The documentary?
Yeah. No, not the doc. The one with...
Space Jam?
Not Space Jam. The one about the Jordan story.
Shoot. Air. I haven't seen Air, actually.
You haven't seen Air? You haven't seen Air?
I kept meaning to go.
You haven't seen Air?
I haven't seen it. I actually completely forgot that it came out. I meant to go see it with my wife, and then it was just one of those things where it's like, oh, we'll go see it next week, and then we just never did it. So I'm sure I can see it online somewhere.
That's funny. I could see.
I literally have just never seen
Now
it.
you got to see it, and you're gonna see. So there's a character. Sonny Vaccaro was the guy who Nike had back in the late '70s, early '80s, who was going and paying to get. He was the guy who was getting the athletes.
Gotcha.
Back in the early '80s, he was getting NCAA basketball teams to wear Nikes.
Yep.
So he'd go and he'd give Bobby Knight $5,000 and free sneakers for the team. He'd give Dean Smith $5,000. $5,000 was a lot of money back then, I guess. But that's how he was getting all these teams to wear Nikes.
Right.
But that's because they were spending all this money because they didn't have the market share. Adidas was by far number one over Nike.
Makes sense.
And then when they had the opportunity to get Jordan. And what he did with the breads, you know the story. When with the colorway and paying the way for the fines, because back then in the NBA you had to wear white sneakers. It's a great story. I love it.
Really, I read the book Shoe Dog about Phil Knight.
Yes.
So I'm familiar with the story a little bit, but I didn't see the movie. I did want to see it, and I'm sure the movie it digs a little bit deeper, and I'd really love to watch it. I completely forgot it existed, to be honest with you.
Oh, you got to watch it. So we've gone through your history of the sneaker game, but now your baby, Apthcry.
Yes.
How did that come to be?
So that was really, it sort of was born out of COVID. I mean, we were just kind of, me and my friend, the other industrial designer, had been talking for a while about starting something. We just didn't know what the product was going to be. And then, but we were both sneakerheads. In fact, he's the sort of person who reignited my love of sneakers in college. Like I had sort of cooled down on them a little bit. And he would always come to class with like the newest 11s on, or whatever. I think he came right after like the cool gray release in 2010, just looking fresh. And I was like, dang, those are clean. So shout out to Osman. But yeah, so we've been talking for a while, and we're both like, you know what, socks make so much sense. It's an area that doesn't have, at least at the moment, we felt there wasn't a lot of innovation, and also it's, like I said, the forgotten accessory. So we both were like, you know what, socks. Can't be that hard to make.
Was there another product that you were thinking about? Were you like, let's make a sneaker cleaner?
We tried a bunch of different things. We did talk about sneaker cleaners for a while, and we had both kind of dabbled in production of things. Like at the time, he had produced, he'd actually taken an Off-White belt and turned it into a camera strap, and he got featured on Hypebeast and all sorts of stuff. And then, of course, Off-White went and made the strap themselves too. But so we had sort of dabbled in different things. I had tried, like small, like I'd been involved in creating sneakers for some brands before. Like I worked with VaynerMedia on a Planters peanut shoe for Planters. It was a promotional shoe. And then like I worked with a
under which
brand.
brand?
It was just purely like a one-off, not a one-off, but there was probably like 1,000 pairs of it. It was just a brand new shoe.
Got it.
So basically VaynerMedia had teamed
So
up.
who produced the shoe?
It was this company in Philadelphia called Garrison.
Cool.
They're like a custom shoemaking house. Yeah. So they produced like 1,000 pairs of that. And then also there was a pair. Oh, hey, caught it. There was also this one. So this is a shoe that I actually made with a company called We Are Underdogs, a Portuguese company. We made it from the ground up. They basically reached out and were like, hey, we really liked your review that you did for another shoe that we had made with someone else. We'd love to do a shoe with you. And I'm like, that's amazing to have my own custom shoe with my name on the back. Like it's got my signature on the back and everything.
Very fucking cool.
It was sick. Now I will say that shoe didn't end up coming out exactly how I wanted it to. The sketches were a little bit different, but I worked with what I could, or with what I had.
What was the biggest hiccup?
The midsole outsole situation. Like I wanted something completely different, but that was the only option that they had. They were more of a dress shoe company, and I was trying to create a sneaker, and it ended up being sort of a sneaker dress shoe hybrid.
Yeah, this looks like something that Cole Haan does a lot.
Exactly. Yep.
Which I'm not the biggest fan of on on anything.
No. Yeah, and there's a whole big story behind the We Are Underdogs collaboration. Essentially what happened was I worked with them. I flew out to Portugal. I was involved. I mean, I completely designed the shoe from scratch, and they basically gave me free rein to do whatever I wanted. But then I flew out to Portugal when they were producing the samples, and I got to pick the materials. Like this is actually, like this was a $250 shoe, but the materials that we used were actually decent. Like this is a really, really great nubuck. This is a really nice leather. The suedes are decent. Like this is like a custom, a really nicely made shoe, and they were actually losing apparently money on each shoe. And
right. So when you designed this, it's not like you would design so many shoes.
Right. That was like my first.
What did this colorway mean to you?
So originally it was supposed to be white and blue and not gray and blue, but they didn't have the right material. That's one of the things that happens when you work with like nicer materials. Unless you have like a lot of money to blow on like finding exactly what you want, you kind of just work with whatever's in the factory. So it was originally supposed to be white and blue because I really like the UNC sort of colorways, and blue is one of my favorite colors. So I was just like, it's a sick colorway. I might as well do that. And then this was supposed to be more of like a raw suede color, so more of a tan than a brownish color.
Yeah, it's like a brownish.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's a dope shoe. I will say it's a dope shoe.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
And there will definitely be more to come from you.
Yes, not from them though, because they kind of screwed me over a little bit.
Maybe Garrison and you will just create
apparently
something
they're not
special.
even a company anymore. I didn't even realize that.
Oh,
yeah, they're gone.
So we're giving a shout out to a company that doesn't even exist.
Yeah, 2 companies that don't even exist anymore. Yeah, so the problem with We Are Underdogs is that they started doing collabs with a bunch of influencers.
Yeah.
And I guess the shoes weren't selling as well as they thought, so they lost a bunch of money and then disappeared.
I could see where they went with like the concept though. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Not
a bad idea.
No, it's a great idea because they figure, all right, if we work with 50 guys like Seth and we sell 500 pairs of shoes per person, then
we're making money.
We're making money, and like these guys have this type of following, so like it's not dumb.
Right. No, it isn't, and it was a good concept in theory. I was supposed to get paid in theory. I never got paid, which is fine, I guess. But
it's just the margins just weren't there.
They weren't there. Yeah, and then they ended up after about 2 years, they ended up just not fulfilling like a couple. I mean, I think in my shoes, there's probably about 25 orders that they didn't fill. I ended up just paying the people back because I was like, this is crazy. Yeah. And they just went ghost on me. I called them. I know where the dude lives because I went to his house. Yeah. But I'm not gonna like fly to Portugal over $8,000. You know. So. It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. And listen, you have it on the resume.
Exactly. And I like I said, I tried to pay everyone because I had the order sheet, so I know everyone who bought a pair that didn't get their pair, so I tried to refund everybody. So I think everyone that bought a pair that didn't get one should be whole now.
And I hope they all have gotten at least one free pair of socks.
They haven't, but that's because I did that before the socks came out.
Well, you still have their address.
I should.
You should hit them all up and send them all a pair of socks.
I got you a pair of friends and family socks.
You should do that. So 2020.
Right.
You create the company
with
your partner.
Yep.
When did it actually kind of catch fire?
So it took us a couple months to, essentially what we did is we reached out to a factory and we're like, hey, we've got a sock design, we'd really like you to make it. So we went through a couple like very light sampling rounds and we created the sock 1.0, which essentially at the time was pretty much a standard crew sock. So we basically did 4 different designs, we created a collection and we launched them in early access, which essentially was on my YouTube videos. I was like, hey, sign up for this email. You'll get early access to our first sock drop. So we dropped the early access the day before the launch, and I think we had maybe 400 pairs of socks, like 100 pairs in each colorway, and they sold out within like 20 minutes. In early access, we didn't think that they were going to sell out, so we didn't save any pairs for the actual launch, so we launched with nothing. So we knew that was going to be a thing, and for the first 6 months to a year, we were literally just packing out of his apartment in Philly. We'd do a drop like maybe every 2 or 3 months. We'd sell like 400 to 600 pairs of socks each drop, and we'd ship them and then kind of go from there. And then we got basically a share space warehouse, which was essentially a 5x5 little office space where we kept all our socks and shipped out of there. And slowly over time, like we hired actually Osman's cousin to be our head of fulfillment, who, you know, I'm not always like the biggest proponent of hiring family, but he ended up just being a great guy who actually ended up being just really, really great at what he does. So that worked out, thank God.
Amen.
Yeah, for real. Because can you imagine? I can't imagine like hiring family and then having to fire family. It would be awful. But I'm so glad we didn't get in that situation. But no, he's been wonderful. So shout out to Josh.
So what was the biggest thing that has been the biggest catalyst to your growth? Because before we got on the mics, you were talking about being in Zoomies.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty fucking massive.
I know, right? It's crazy. So I think it was, initially we got a little bit of a boost because of my social media following. We call that sort of our cheat code, because basically this brand was never supposed to be a merch brand of Seth Fowler. It was supposed to be its own separate brand.
Yeah, but like, one, how can you do that? Two, why would you do that?
Exactly. So we started out basically as merch.
It's not like you're making soap.
Exactly.
You're making something that has a direct correlation with the product that defines your persona.
100%. So yeah, we started out with that. It started because I had done merch in the past, like T-shirts, but no one wants a T-shirt that says Seth Fowler on it. Like who would want that? I wouldn't even want that. Let's go.
I might.
Oh, you actually?
You make a shirt that says Seth Fowler, I'll rock it.
Well, I'd done it in the past, and we had sold like maybe 10. So you'd be one of the 10.
I'd be number 11.
But yeah, the socks I think did well because not only was it able to support it it gave people who were fans of the channel a way to support me, but also it was something that actually provided value to their life, like it was a good pair of socks. And then over the years, we developed the sock and we made it better. We had sock 2.0, which essentially was a slightly different knit and a slightly different material blend, and then we finally got to 3.0. But it was a slow process of like basically growing our audience through social media, not only through my social media, but now with our Apthcry accounts, social media, and just creating a really good product that people want to come back. Like our return rate is super high. I think it's like it's an insane like 52 or 3%. So out of everyone who buys our product, it's 50% people are returning customers, which apparently is really high, is what I've heard. I don't know for sure, but
that sounds very high.
It feels high. It feels, because we'll see. I don't ship anymore, but like I'll go through every so often like the orders, and I'll notice names. I'm like, wow, and then I'll click their name because I recognize it, and they'll have like 20 plus orders. I'm like, that's insane that someone's supporting for that long, and they'll buy like, because our collections usually consist of 4 pairs of socks and then accessories and clothing, and they'll buy like the whole collection every time. So it's incredible the support that we've gotten. But
well, because you have a product where you're creating something that people, one, wear every day,
right,
and two, different designs that go with different kicks.
Yeah, exactly. And we're trying to work more with artists and people who have really cool stories to tell that haven't been able to tell their stories in this medium before, and I think that's going to be really exciting the more that we do. But getting into Zoomies, we'd been in retail before. We're actually in a retail store in New York called Take Out NY, which is up in Harlem. And so we'd done retail before, but never on this scale. And it was basically, we had gone to it was an event called Agenda in Las Vegas. And it was essentially a bunch of brands would go, and then buyers from these stores would go to this event and buy products. And we met people from Zoomies, but just nothing came of it. And then 2 years later, we got an email like, hey, we'd like to stock your product. And we're like, wow, this is amazing. This must have been Agenda. So they started stocking it, and it's kind of been, now it's just in all Zoomies.
That's
so
amazing.
Yeah.
If there was one store,
Right,
or whether it's e-com or brick and mortar that you would love to be in, where would that be?
I would love to have an Apthcry brick and mortar, if I'm being honest. That would be great. It just doesn't make financial sense currently because we just do so well in e-com. It's like it would purely be a marketing play over anything else.
100%, but a lot of companies do that.
Yeah, and I think eventually we will.
Where would that be? If there was one corner.
Philly. Oh,
Philly?
There's a spot in.
So you think Philly because you live there, because you want to be able to touch it.
Yeah.
But do you think Philly makes more sense than being somewhere in New York?
Well, so a lot of our identity is based in Philly because everyone at the company other than myself is born and raised in Philly. I'm from Baltimore originally, but Philly is sort of where I've spent, like I went to college in Philly, I moved to New York for about 5 years and then moved back to Philly. So I've been in Philly probably more than any other place other than Baltimore in my life. So it's kind of the place that I feel the most. My wife is born and raised in Philly. So we're so tied in with that area. And there was a store called Ubik on Walnut Street, which is kind of our main shopping street in Philadelphia. It became Atmos and then it kind of went away. That would just be like this perfect storefront, but it's probably a $20,000 a month sort of rent. And it's like,
is it that big?
It's pretty large. It's I'm trying to think of, I don't know if you're familiar with the inside of Kith, but it's probably
Very familiar.
Okay,
Which one?
the one
On Lafayette?
on Lafayette. Yeah. It's honestly probably about the same. The bottom floor is the same size, but it's a 3-floor situation. I think the top 2 floors are smaller. So I don't know if
Oh, it's a massive store.
it's a massive store.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you wouldn't just
Yeah.
sell socks. You'd sell.
We'd have to sell something else too. Or
Got it.
what we do is we'd just have the storefront on the bottom floor and then rent out the top as offices, or maybe we'd have our offices and warehouse in there.
What about partnering with a consignment company?
We've thought about that.
Apthcry and District.
We've definitely thought about that, and we've reached out to some, but it's interesting. Some people aren't open to the idea, and then other times you run into problems of, well, say the sneaker market goes down, the consignment store can't make rent, and then we have to make it. Or a big thing in sneakers is legit checking sneakers, and so if a consignment store has an issue where they miss a couple sneakers, then it's like it looks bad on everybody.
100%.
So that's another thing that we've thought about. And two, in terms of like asset protection, the chance of having a break-in in a sneaker store is probably 10 times higher than a sock store. Like no one really wants to steal. I mean, they probably do. We probably would have some theft, but the chance of you getting your store broken into if you have sneakers versus socks is probably pretty different.
Yeah, we're talking about day and night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what does the next 6 months look like for you?
So we've really started hiring pretty heavily in the sock company. We just hired a graphic designer. She starts in August, which we're excited about.
If you hired a graphic designer, doesn't
Yeah.
that take away from your role?
I'm so happy about it because
Yeah?
we've run into so much with me doing YouTube. essentially full time and doing Apthcry essentially full time. And then I've been involved in a lot. Like I've gotten really heavily involved in my church. I just had a baby. Like there's so much stuff going on. I'm in a band. Like all this crazy. It's just too much.
I'm in a band.
Yeah, it's just too many things. So because of that, I wouldn't say that it's made our products worse, but it definitely doesn't. I don't have as much time to really put in the effort into creating really cool socks as much as I did.
Yeah.
So I still try and create the best socks possible, the coolest looking socks possible, but the amount of time that I can allot to that is smaller. So having a graphic designer, essentially what that allows us to do is have someone who's better at graphic design than I am. Like I'm decent at industrial design, but graphic design not as much. Even though it's a similar area, it's slightly different. And it also allows us to have someone who can take our ideas and make them better than we could make them. So it's someone who can have their own ideas and create their own visions, and then also take our visions and make them even better than what we were able to make them. And having someone to do that full time is just a huge
When you do that, are you going and poaching people, or are you putting out?
We're just putting out job listings. We did try and work with people that we knew initially.
Yeah.
But then you run into the problem of like, well, sometimes someone that you think would be a great employee, which we haven't had this personally, but I've experienced this vicariously through other people. They just don't end up being who you thought they were, and you end up losing friendships over it. So we did start hiring externally, and we put out some listings on job boards and starting to meet people different ways. And so we've hired one graphic designer to start, and then I think we're going to try and hire more as we grow, because I think graphic designer is our biggest area of need currently, because we just don't have the time to create as many products as we could sell. So that's the biggest point. Yeah. And then eventually we'll look. We have a guy who basically does full-time SEO and marketing for us. We have a guy who does full-time fulfillment and shipping for us. We have a couple part-time shippers. We have Osman, who's full-time at the company, basically running daily operations, and then me, who's there full-time, but from a essentially like work-from-home perspective, where I just handle some design, social media stuff. Like Osman does the Instagram, but I do like the YouTube channel and all sort of stuff, and we kind of we deal with whatever it is that we need to deal with. Like
Are you guys setting monthly goals, quarterly goals, annual goals?
Yep, absolutely.
Because it sounds like, at the rate that you're hiring, you've probably grown 6 to 10x since when you started.
Yeah.
Since after year one, you've probably grown 6+x.
Oh yeah. I think our first year we did maybe 50K in sales. Last year we did.
What is that net?
The margins. Oh shoot.
Are the margins on socks very good?
They're pretty good. I don't know if I'll get into the margins, but I will say that it netted.
No, if you go into the margins, you might have like
yeah,
like hate DMs.
Well, the thing is now, because we have so much overhead, the margins are great, but we don't bring home a lot. We're trying to we're basically reinvesting all of our money. Like I haven't gotten paid this year because we're reinvesting all of it into the business.
Amen.
So our first year we probably did like 40, 50K maybe. And then last year we ended with I think like 1.2. So not bad. And then this year hopefully we're trying to do significantly more than that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what are you reading right now other than the Bible?
I'm actually reading a book called Doctrine by Mark Driscoll, basically about the Bible. That's currently what I'm reading.
Tell me about it.
So essentially, it's a deeper dive into what Christians believe, and so it's on things like the Trinity, sort of a deeper dive into what the Trinity actually is. It's into what human nature is, and I've also been doing sort of side reading on Christian spirituality. There's this guy. I don't remember his name offhand. But there's this book that I'm about to get into that I've been watching a documentary on that's about like the sort of weird spiritual aspects of the Bible, like the Nephilim and like all these crazy like things that I just never knew as just someone who grew up in Christianity. Just like a deeper dive into just.
And it's all very enlightening.
It's unbelievably enlightening. And I think whether that's one thing that I've really appreciated about diving more into my faith is that I've met people who maybe aren't Christian, but they've really done a deep dive into their faith, and there's so much that everyone can learn from one another, and there's so many things that are so intertwined in what people believe, and it's really, really interesting. Like the pastor who married me and my wife actually had really, really delved deeply into Islam, and sort of the similarities and the differences between Islam and Christianity, and the way that they're so, because they both came from a similar region. There's so much to learn from both religions that I think it's the study of religion in general has been really interesting to me. And just because I'm a Christian, doesn't mean I'm closing myself off to learning about other religions, because there's just so much to learn. And I'm still just scratching the surface. So if I said anything wrong about any of these religions, that's because I just don't know much.
Anything. No,
Okay,
everything you said was extremely on point. And if anything, you've just shown that you are so open-minded.
Oh, thanks.
And you just want to learn so much because while you know a lot, you can always learn more.
Yeah, exactly.
What's one book that you would recommend for anybody?
You know what? Honestly, I would probably recommend, and this is not something I'm sure a lot of people would want to read, but Dave Ramsey's the Total Money Makeover. And that's something that I think Dave Ramsey is definitely a polarizing figure for a lot of people. But one thing that I've noticed as I've gotten older is that a lot of people don't know how to spend their money and handle their money. It's such a huge thing, and the Total Money Makeover essentially is a way of, it's talking about how being careful with your money, saving, and then also handling debt in certain situations. I think there is a lot of, we could get into a whole discussion about this. I'm pro debt, but I understand that like there's different kinds of debt. So it's basically saying pay off your consumer level debt, pay off your bad debt, and save for your future and invest. And that's something that a lot of people don't think about and they don't understand. So it's such a simple concept, and it's such a simple theory that isn't taught anywhere other than, if you do external readings. So I think that would be really important for a lot of people to read, because although the book maybe it's not the best for everybody, I do think that concept of living on less than you make is so important. And whether, investing, taking that extra money and investing in either, stock market, real estate, whatever it is that you want to invest in, but making sure that you're saving for your future is so important. People just don't do that. They don't think about it.
And I think it's very important to read financial literacy books.
Absolutely.
Best time to read them is either like end of December or in the new year, because that's when people mentally are looking for change. And they're like, what can I do better, or what can I do more or different? And financial literacy books at times of when you're looking for change versus other times of the year will have more of an effect on your psyche.
Right, absolutely. I completely agree. Yeah.
So before we let you go,
give
me one word of advice for anyone trying to make it.
One word of advice. I would say keep doing it. Keep working at it, because it's something that it's not always going to work out for you, but if you don't try, you're going to regret it. And I think the only way to make something work is to really try at it. So, yeah.
My man.
I appreciate you, man. This has been great.
Seth Fowler, the most analytical sneaker YouTuber you're ever going to see, and Apthcry, the most analytically designed socks you will ever wear and own. Later.
Appreciate it.